No one was hurt in Lieutenant Fiorentine's dramatic encounter. No one was prosecuted either, a detail the Coast Guard is working to change. The waters and shores of Puerto Rico. For all their beauty, there is an equal element of danger and destruction. Early one morning in December 2004, a Yola carrying 91 migrants was nearing the end of a long and tiresome journey to Puerto Rico. A journey that ended in the worst way possible. Swamped in the surf near the rocky Dorado coast of Puerto Rico, the Yola capsized. 8 migrants were killed. 5 individuals were ultimately held responsible. Charged with human smuggling, these Dominican men were sentenced to 73 years in prison. Until recently, they were among only a few smugglers to ever face prosecution in the United States.
It was pretty much a revolving door. The migrants we would pick up and we'd repatriate within 8 hours. And so managing their expectations, it was pretty easy because you picked them up, you fed them, and you brought them back within 6 to 8 hours. Only on a few cases was there ever a thought of prosecution.
This sort of taxi service, where migrants were picked up and immediately sent back, was a source of great frustration for many members of the Coast Guard. After all, they had witnessed, time and again, the dangers smugglers put migrants in. What's more, many migrants began attempting to cross the Mona Passage repeatedly. They were always taken back. They were hardly ever penalized.
Their success rate, leaving Dominican Republic, coming to Puerto Rico, is about 1 in 3. So if they're going to take 3 trips across, probably one of them they're going to get through.
Some of the migrants identified us. They knew us. They knew the ship. They'd be like, hey, we just saw you at your port call. Some of them, surprisingly, had worked in local restaurants and recognized my crew members. A cashier at 7-Eleven said, hey, you guys picked me up 2 months ago. And that's you laugh at it, but it's also somewhat scary. That person knows how we operate.
Adding to their fears, the Coast Guard could never be certain of just who was on board their cutters and who was trying to enter the United States, a concern that only grew in the wake of 9/11.
We do the interdictions in the Mona Passage. We believe that they're migrants, but our greatest concern is that they're potential terrorists or prior terrorists, prior felons, former murderers, drug smugglers, etc. So the intent was, once we get them on board a Coast Guard cutter, is that we would find a way to identify who they really are.
The answer came in November of 2006 with the introduction of a device which allows the Coast Guard to use biometrics, in this case fingerprint data, to identify the migrants on their cutters.
This entails taking the device and then having you provide 2 fingerprints, one from each hand, and then we take a picture, and then there's a little drive that we download all the files on, take them to the laptop, and then enter the biographic information.
We run that via the U.S. Visit database, and quite frankly, we've got some hits on felons. Today there are 19 people in jail based on this program. Just over the last 6 months. So if we get people with warrants out, usually for smuggling or something else that they've done in the United States, we can and do arrest them. If there is no warrant out, if the fingerprint comes back negative, we send the migrant back to Dominican Republic. However, if they try again and we get another hit on them, that is felony.
Within, an hour or less, we can bring these folks on board, process them with biometrics, link up with our sister agencies, and they can tell us exactly who we have on board and what dangers that potentially are faced on board.
To date, San Juan is the only place in the Coast Guard to try its hand at biometrics. From the very start, they've seen results.
I think a day or two we'd been out there and an aircraft spotted a Yola, had about a dozen migrants on board, went out there, had a couple positive hits. process ran its course, and they ended up bringing one ashore for prosecution. So it was very rewarding. We were, frankly, we were a little surprised that we got 2 hits out of a dozen. So as soon as that happened, I think we all kind of realized, hey, this is going to be something big. This is a pretty big deal.
A big deal for both the Coast Guard and the smugglers and felons trying to enter the country. Those individuals could now face serious penalties, to include up to 2 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for those who attempt to re-enter the United States after deportation. Felons who were convicted prior to deportation could face up to 10 years in prison and pay $250,000. Migrant smugglers could spend 5 to 20 years in prison and also pay a $250,000 fine. And those who fail to heave or don't stop at the instruction of the Coast Guard could land themselves in prison for 5 years and again pay a $250,000 fine.
We're telling everyone it's not just a dangerous journey, it's a dangerous journey that could also land you in jail if you're caught.
Quítate la gorra, por favor. Mirándolo a él.
I think it's cutting edge for the Coast Guard and for the Department of Homeland Security and for the nation overall to be able to apply biometrics in an underway environment, specifically at sea, to be able to determine who we may or may not have attempting to cross and gain illegal entry into the United States.
So just how effective is biometrics? In 2006, just 1 migrant was brought ashore for prosecution. As of July 2007, that number jumped to more than 60 individuals.
And what we're finding out is we're getting a 20% hit rate on people that either been involved in a criminal activity, tried to enter the country before, or for some of the reason we might want to be aware of their presence. And this has led to increased prosecutions, and we think is a very, very good demonstration of where we need to go in the future with biometrics.
A future that's bright indeed.
I think so.
But Coast Guard officials are careful not to attribute a recent decrease in the number of interdictions in the Mona Passage to the use of biometrics alone.
No, mamá, yo me voy. Y después que yo me vaya, o tiburón, o agua, o Puerto Rico. Eso me voy a ver jamás.
These are the faces and the stories of those left behind. Dominican families who have lost a loved one in the Mona Passage. They have agreed to participate in an aggressive media campaign orchestrated by the U.S. Embassy in the Dominican Republic, the Coast Guard, and others to warn of the dangers of crossing the Mona Passage.
Last year we went over, and the theme was not only the risk involved in attempting to cross the Mona Pass in an overladen yawl of too many people on a small wooden vessel that maybe had 12 to 18 inches of freeboard across a very dangerous body of water, but also the risk in terms of if you're caught, and you're caught in a certain location, as we run biometrics and have the opportunity, we will bring you ashore for prosecution and gain a conviction.
Uno solo llamado Rafael.
These testimonials, commercials, and other events represent yet another effort to deter those who dare cross the Mona Passage. There is evidence to suggest these efforts, along with biometrics and other tactics, are working. In 2007, migrant activity in the Mona Passage has dropped substantially.
The percentage drop of migration in the pass is significant. It's over 40%. Now, is that all due to biometrics? I don't know at this point. That'd be more of an intel question. But the fact is that the bad guys know it's out there, and we're using it actively.
While that staggering statistic is welcome news for members of the Coast Guard in San Juan, it's hardly reason for anyone to let their guard down.